XMD Ambition, out of the box, it reminded me quite a lot of the Vault 4. It had a dry feeling despite being covered in factory look, and the outer magnets were initially very weak, while the inners were noticeably stronger. Corner cutting, especially at the 2x1 portions, was quite limited, but one major difference, however, was that the Ambition was a lot lighter, and after I set it up and break it in, all the negative things I have to say about the Vault 4 seemed to reduce, and the Ambition soon caught up to flagship standard. The setup I did to the Ambition involved cleaning out the factory loops and adding the just loops, specifically red on the rings, yellow on the pieces, and a touch of regular silicone lube, to reduce the dry and plastic rubbing against plastic with some drag force feeling. And then after that I just broke it in for about 70 sols, and the magnets felt a bit nicer and more noticeable, and the corner cutting also did improve. Despite being marketed at 60, when I actually measured the Ambition, and just to show you there's actually no zero error here, it actually came in at 59.8, which is quite close to 60, but I did find that it's slightly smaller than something like a mini Aosu, and of course it's larger than things like the Meilong 4M and the Aosu WRM. The inner layers come in at 14.25, which is exactly the same size as the Aosu WR, and this means that it has a bigger inner to outer layer ratio than not just the Aosu WR, but like most other 4x4s out there, which have a 14.5 inner instead, and the Meilong also has a 14.5, but other 4x4s will have a slightly bigger outer layer than the Meilong to make up the 60mm, while this is 59. The edges actually have the same curve shape as a modern 3x3, and the corners likewise they're actually round on the inside and squared off at the tip, just like a 3x3. The Ambition is also marketed to be semi-frosted, which I can tell is not as shiny as something as a fully glossy cube, but when I hold it, it definitely feels more like a glossy cube than a frosted cube. It seems to resemble what my Meilong 3M is after I polished it, and it has no issues of being slippery at all. The most unique and in my opinion the best feature of the Ambition is its overall weight. It's the lightest 4x4 on the market, supposedly at 106 grams, and the nearest cube to that would be the Meilong at 109, followed by the MGC at 115, and the majority is over 120. And while lighter doesn't always mean better, I actually quite like it in this particular case, and I do find that it's less effort to just hold the cube and do sessions. For corner cutting, I would say it's just quite standard. The forward corner cutting is about one piece. Yeah, it doesn't really do much more than one piece, which is kind of equal or slightly less than some of the other 4x4s, but I would say it's enough to get the job done most of the time. The inner corner cutting for the 1x2 layers it used to be a little bit limited at first when I got it right out of the box, which is one issue I really don't like about the Vault 4, but this issue seems to solve itself the more I break the cube in. Yeah, maybe it still doesn't feel as liberal as some of the other cubes that I have, but definitely it's good enough. And when it comes to reverse corner cutting, I think this is where this cube is really good. You can cut close to a full piece on its outer layer. The inner is, I would say, quite nice as well. And for the right in the middle, it's I would say there's nothing special for cutting right in the middle. I would say the 2x1 is really a huge improvement over the Vault 4, especially for OL parities, because you'll be cutting through that area a lot. When it comes to the feel, it's just really soft and really nice, as opposed to some other cubes where it's a little bit crunchier, which I actually do like the Aosu feel, but it's for totally different reasons compared to the Ambition. And for stability, I wouldn't say that the Ambition is the most stable cube out there, but given its really soft feel, the Ambition does have a higher risk of accidentally squishing out of shape and resulting in a catch, but most of the time the stability is sufficient. The Ambition differs from your typical WU series cube. So normally in cubes that follow the WU mechanism, at the feet of the second layer, you actually have this extra piece of flashing going on at the side here, and you would dig underneath a groove that has been cut into the outermost layers. So the groove actually follows on throughout all the pieces of the outermost layer. But if you were to take a look at the Ambition, the groove only exists on the corners and it actually doesn't continue on to the edges. And that small spike at the end of the edge is completely absent. So normally this will form some sort of anti-popping mechanism. So for example, I can hold the pieces of the spark like that and try to pull this out, but because of that small piece of flash, kind of locks the piece in place. Whereas with the Ambition, I can casually slide this in and out. In general, most piece types follow an AOMEC style cuts, while the WMEC style cuts only exist on the corners and doesn't really participate in any extra anti-pop mech. Instead, it seems to take some of the function of the anti-stick design because it minimizes contact, and it also serves to lighten the cube because the trench is effectively a hollow domain. Anchor size between the Aosu WR and the Ambition seems to be roughly similar, with the top anchor of the Ambition being a bit bigger than the Aosu, and the bottom anchor of the Aosu being a little bit bigger than the Ambition. When it comes to what makes the Ambition so light, comparing holes in most pieces, the only real difference I can really find that doesn't quite exist on other 4x4s is on this particular piece, where at the base you can see that this portion below is hollow. The Meilong 4M kind of did it too, but to a lesser extent, and generally I would say that being a premium cube rather than a budget cube, the Ambition does do it in a really clean way. The Ambition is a very nice cube, definitely Chi's best 4x4. I especially like its lightweight and soft feel. Most aspects of its performance are comparable to other top 4x4s on the market. It's not a one cube to rule them all, but it qualifies as Chi's entry into the top 4x4 league, which would have otherwise been dominated by Moi and Yongqin. I would say that Ambition best suits a lighter and more effortless turning style given its weaker magnets and lighter weight. I do think the Ambition, however, is more geared towards an experienced or faster solver, and it is somewhat less beginner friendly. This is given the whole break-in and setup process, as well as considering the weaker magnets and softer feel, you need more skill and accuracy in order to fully maximize the Ambition as compared to other 4x4s, otherwise you are likely to just get more lockup. versus the standard factory Meilong, I would say that the Ambition does feel like a non-budget version of the Meilong. The weights are similar at 106 and 109 grams, and both are fast, and they have similar magnet strengths and degrees of corner cutting, except for the Ambition having very good reverse corner cutting. Additionally, the Ambition is not frosted. I would recommend getting the Ambition if you can afford it, and the Meilong if you can't, because that's the whole point of budget cubes. The exception, however, is for people who particularly want a 59mm cube over a 60 or 59.8mm, and for that reason, I see myself more likely to switch my main to a stickerless Meilong. Versus the super strong magnetic Angstrom Meilong, in other words, is my main cube. It's more like a Fog 5 with a 1.5 times or even 2 times stronger magnets. And it has a fast turning feel, but like each turn has a considerable snapping in and out of a magnet. And my turning style is very different from the Ambition. I would say that the Ambition wins this comparison because I like it better with its softer and lighter turning style compared to the more aggressive spamming turning style I have on the Meilong. And when it comes to timings, the Ambition is slightly faster, but it's more of a black versus stickerless thing rather than actual cube quality. And with recognition and speed aside, I can actually pull the same TPS off on either cube. Versus Aosu WRM, the Aosu is just a more solid and stable cube than the Ambition. It has a crunchier piece collision feel, but a silkier gliding texture. And while the Ambition doesn't feel the piece collisions as much, the texture does feel a little bit more of a rub and less of a glide. And I personally prefer the Aosu overall. It just feels like a much more solid and durable build that can put up with both light turning and abusive TPS. It is also smaller with stronger magnets than the Ambition, and I can generally turn the Aosu WR faster than any other 4x4 I've ever seen. My average with it is 43, a number that I've never seen myself average before, except for the previous time I borrowed an Aosu WR, which is Metal Matrix Open 2019, and versus the MGC, I would say the MGC is the most beginner-friendly 4x4 given its semi-budget price tag and lesser setup and break-in compared to like both Meilong and Ambition. I would say it's probably comparable to the Aosu in terms of break-in. The MGC has a harder feel and a glossier texture. This will follow the same description as the Aosu WR but with a thinner plastic. And like the overall turning feel is also even more solid and less flexible than the Aosu, and I would say that if you are just starting out on 4x4 and you're not sure which one to get, the MGC would probably be the safest choice. I personally don't like the MGC as much as the other 4x4s, but it is still definitely a good cube, and there's a fair share of very fast solvers, faster than me, who like the MGC.